I'm Yael Teagle with The Beat. We are talking to the stars and EPs of Amazon Prime Video's Undone. But first, I want to thank our amazing sponsors, Heavy Metal, Interpop, and Comics Publishing Institute for sponsoring our videos at WonderCon. So we talked back in season 1 about the biggest challenges of working in, you called it like a black box theater type stage.
Right. Yes.
Now that we're moving on season 2, what was it like? Did you slide back into this black box theater, or are you adapting to it, or was there a new challenge?
Well, the new challenge was COVID. Yeah. And the main challenge for me, and I think I can speak for these. You guys look so hot. These hot ladies.
Lost in our eyes.
I did. Is that we didn't have our trusty guides with us.
See the ones over there?
You know,
all on Zoom.
Yeah, Kate and Patrick.
I'm so excited to see Patrick. So Patrick was everything to us. He was the only person that was on set. He would yell action. He was essentially a producer, right?
An
but
AD,
an AD,
a producer, director.
and it was just us with him on set and the camera.
Oh, and
camera.
he was also a stand-in. He played Bob. He played Angelique. He played everybody.
Like whenever we would need to stand, like someone to stand in. But basically, season 2, what the point, like there was a COVID, was the very beginning of COVID. So we didn't know what we were doing. It was the first production really to go back. I think in LA, like one of the first productions to go back. So we were not only already in a black box theater, but then with masks, and then no one was allowed on set, and then everyone was on Zoom giving us directions. So it was just a very surreal situation.
Wow.
Well, we were over Zoom mostly.
So the biggest struggle was like getting out of bed and turning on my computer.
Oh wow, so it was easy to make this season. I guess it was just the easiest thing.
Well, it was very difficult for, in terms of production, figuring out how we were going to do it. You know, we had a COVID officer on set. We had limited people on set in terms of numbers who could be there. All of our actors and crew were tested. The crew was the skeleton crew. So the people who were there were doing multiple jobs, including our actors who were doing their own hair and makeup. And yeah, so it was a hustle. It was a hustle for sure.
One of the most interesting things is we had to do our hair, our makeup, or lack of, whatever, you know, hope the rotoscoping could fix anything that we messed up. And literally, all of them were on a Zoom, and we would just come in and say hi, and we would assume that we were brilliant unless they gave us a note and said, you sucked, and do it this way. So it was very remote, except for Patrick. He was the great connective tissue between them and us. It was beautiful.
Wow.
And that would be the note. They'd say, you sucked. That would be specifically, that was their note.
Wow, they are vicious.
Never. We never got that note.
Did that affect the art side of things?
Our artists were all working remotely, so even our painters who do all the background oil paintings were working from home. Our Minnow Mountain rotoscopers were working from home. So there was a lot of adjusting and figuring out how to adjust, but I think ultimately it worked out well in the end. And I think some of those things we'll take forward, moving forward, and take the best of it.
Yeah. Was there anything that because of COVID you guys went, you know, maybe we shouldn't be doing it with the oil paintings and the amount of time? Did any of that cross your mind ever?
Well, nothing as large as that, but I think, you know, necessity is the mother of invention, and I think there are ways in which we adjusted the process that have been helpful that we will probably continue doing even in a more normal circumstance. And I think there are other things where if we could go back to the old way, we would, right? I do think it was a curse and a blessing to have the smaller amount of people on set. I think in some ways it allowed the actors to really focus on the material. There were fewer distractions. I think it made some people's jobs much harder. You know, like our director Hisco had to zoom in remotely from Amsterdam because at that time you couldn't come into the country.
Right.
Right? So I'm sure it would have been nicer if he could actually be on set. But there are other things I think that were helpful in discovering.
Well, this season starts and we realign the timeline. So let's talk time travel. We are at a WonderCon. if you could realign a timeline, what would you go back and change or fix?
Having gone on the journey of season 2, I think I think the only way to move is forward. You know, you can't retroactively fix anything for the purpose of your question. I don't know, one time in 3rd grade, I did that trick where the girl tried to sit down in her chair and I pulled the chair out. I'd probably go back and not do that.
Yeah. that was mean.
I was like, anytime I did something like mean like that, I'd probably be like, nah.
And I feel like when I think about it, I to your point, I don't, every time there's a moment in time where I think, oh, maybe I would go back and change this, there's always such good that comes out of that moment, even if it's a bad moment. There's always such beauty that comes later. I don't think I would. I think everything is always perfect.
Oh, actually, I'll change my answer. I would go back to a different life, because that's, you know, there's like karmic energy left over that comes out in this lifetime. And if you believe in that thing, which I tend to, and so it's like, even if you're doing great in this timeline, you're like, dang, the me from that timeline kind of, that lifetime did a little number. So maybe I would just go back to my previous life and be like, what's up?
I honestly think I agree with both your answers, but there is a part of me that feels like, just like your character, I would feel compulsed, like critical times in life where you wish that the human cost wasn't as much, or the mistake wasn't as hurtful, or somebody just who was so desperate needed just a little bit of extra support. I would just really not be able to resist those times, and I would probably just keep jumping around and helping and fixing and at least trying. But then of course there's the consequences and the butterfly effect, or the effect that I would have that would probably mess everything up anyway. So I would probably go back and give my child self a hug.
Aww.
That's about all I can think of.
I love
That
that.
couldn't do too much harm, could it?
This is pretty small. I mean, it's a significant question, but this is very small, which is that as a young person, I was so fixated on not doing anything in the moment that would embarrass myself later.
Oh.
Like, I saw my parents and their siblings' photos from the 70s wearing bell bottoms and big floral shirts. It's like, I never want to look back and be embarrassed by what I was wearing. So I just like wore all denim all the time. And so I'd love to go back to her and be like, hey, lighten up. It's okay. It's not going to be so bad. Have some fun.
I love that.
I guess we're just assuming that like we can qualify the decisions that we've made. But who's to say that they were good or bad?
Yeah.
The girl who fell on the ground. Not a fan.
Well, maybe that taught her how to,
Brush yourself off.
you know what I mean? It's all about learning.
So season 1 of the series really dealt with trying to figure out if, time travel was possible, or if this character was dealing with mental illness. And season 2 seems to confirm that time travel is possible. So where is the story taking us? Also, you just gave me a look like that is not what's happening.
Well, seems to, I think, is an appropriate
All right.
Descriptor. But, nothing is ever for sure on this show. I mean, we're, I would say, as a show, interested in asking questions and not always as interested in answering them, because life doesn't have answers, right? So even as you pose it as an either-or thing, I've always felt that it was kind of both. It wasn't I don't think those things are necessarily mutually exclusive of each other.
Right. And I think also that there's also sort of a consciousness expansion that's happening too, that is explored through time travel, but it's also kind of an inner journey and unfolding and greater understanding of an unseen world potentially.
Well, before we let you go, we're back at WonderCon. It's the first really big con happening.
Yes.
What is the craziest thing that has happened to you at a WonderCon or a Comic-Con?
Well, this is actually my first time at one of
Oh.
these. I've gone to many different events and stuff, but not a con. So the craziest thing that's happened so far
This.
is my driver was late. No, I'm kidding. No. I don't. Do you have a story?
My craziest thing was, of course, I was late. There was a lot of traffic. Everybody loves, this area. But on the way in, the costumes that I saw, and the trying to figure out what everybody was. That's the craziest thing. It was like a little parade
Yeah,
of fabulousness, and I had no idea who anybody was. So that was kind of neat.
I think the craziest thing about that happened to me at a con was just to feel that overwhelming love, like feeling the fandom up close, like telling you how much your work and your art means to them, and they're just up as you, and it's all about love. Like that's the craziest thing about these cons, and I kind of wish we could live in this con for all time. It's just people being like, I'm so excited about this. I'm so excited about something, and I feel like in the world there's a lot of negativity. I'm so angry about X. I'm so disgruntled or frustrated about X, and here it's just all about I'm so happy and I'm so excited. I'm so in love with this. And that's, I think, I'm always overwhelmed by that positivity, that feeling of love.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Thank you guys so much for chatting with us.
Thank you.
Thank you. Undone Season 2 is going to be on Amazon Prime Video very soon. But of course, thank you again to Heavy Metal, Interpop, and Comics Publishing Institute for sponsoring our videos at WonderCon.